we're good to go. Sorry for the short delay here. Do a quick round of introductions because we've got someone new joining us today. Maybe we could just do a quick round. Gianna, do you want to start?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm Gianna. I'm a senior majoring in urban planning, gonna try to minor in GIS, and I'm looking into an independent study with Professor Pringle next semester and stuff.
Good.
Hi, I'm Shrifa. I'm a second year master's student co-advised by Dr. Pringle. I'm an earth sciences graduate student and I do a lot of landmine detections and remote sensing and drones.
Hello, I'm Priyanka, first year graduate student, and my focus is on indoor positioning, or I can say indoor mapping. Thank you.
I'm Lily, I'm a sophomore and I'm studying indoor mapping.
I'm Dan, I'm also a senior, and my interest is remote sensing in rural areas and archaeology.
Yes, my name is Bakima. I'm a first year graduate student. I'm
What's that?
We spoke at the mixer last week. You said I could come down.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Come on in. No, we're just actually doing introductions here. You can have this chair.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah, please. You're just doing introductions. Yeah, Buckman was introducing it.
Yes, my name is Bakima. I'm first year graduate student, and my research interest is in urban infrastructure mapping using UAVs or LiDAR.
Hi, I'm Liam. First year's master's student for geography, and I'm interested in LiDAR, remote sensing, and visualization for archaeology.
Hi, my name's Peter. I'm a 4+1, but I'm kind of a second year master's right now too. And yeah, I'm into thermal imaging, wildlife management, and conducting studies in nature preserves to try to track deer populations.
All right. Yeah.
My name's Austin. I'm a sophomore in FRI and environmental visualization stream. So I've had experience with a lot of the big materials and processes you use in this lab. I'm just looking to learn more about it and keep using that stuff as my stream ends this semester.
So we met at the FRI mixer last week.
We did.
Okay. We don't need to do the whole spiel again, but just names at least as we go around.
I'm Gianna.
Sharifa.
Priyanka, Lily.
Dan.
All right. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So the way this kind of usually works is everybody prepares a very short little PowerPoint on what they've been up to research-wise in the last week. It's pretty low key, so you'll see memes, you'll see other things in here. We like to have fun with it. We record these to be a part of the kind of the lab archive. So we've got lab meetings recorded all the way back from 2018. We'll kind of walk you through what some of that is, but it's a way to kind of build institutional knowledge. Be surprised how often you go back and look at these old lab reports to find things that you did that you kind of forgot how to do again. So I usually start out, so we've got grads and undergraduates in here. What else do we want to say about these?
My reports, yeah, I think you said it right. Like it's just low key, like just going over the kind of the research you've done and what you plan on doing, goals too.
Yeah, goals as well. Yeah. And so feel free to ask questions, right? So sometimes we sort of get in the habit of just sort of like going through the whole thing. But I will often interrupt and like ask a question. Everyone should feel free to just ask a question if there's something that you want to talk about. Like these are meant to be discussions and to get ideas. They're not just presentations. So, all right, so we'll go ahead and get started. I often start out when I've got something. It happened to this week. Okay, so work. Yes. So the DJI drones are sort of on the watch list for the federal government. There's a lot of restrictions about what you can do with the DJI drones as it interfaces with federal projects. So they're kind of clamping down on those. There's sort of talk that they might get banned eventually, but that's not quite kind of on the radar yet. But one of the things that is happening soon is that on November 7th, all of the DJI flight logs that have been recorded are being deleted. And part of the reason for that is that the government doesn't want DJI to have all of your stuff all of the time. So to meet that kind of a demand, they're saying, all right, that's fine, we'll just delete all of this stuff. So that's coming. Aloft has a tool to migrate that stuff over. I'm kind of interested in this, but not super interested, but I thought it was worth the talk. The big 64 core machine that we have in the lab for sort of big data processing, I'm still kind of fighting with on random shutdowns. Traced it back to temperature, at least partly. So I'm changing some settings to try to keep the processor clock limited a little bit. There's 64 cores, you've got plenty of compute power. There's no need to run it to overclock it or anything like that. There's also some super weird behavior going on with the hard drive. I haven't quite gotten to the bottom of it yet, but if you run, so we've got this like 20,000 image set of images from Rapa Nui that we're trying to do a 3D reconstruction of, and if we run it from the local hard drive, it takes like hours to just load the data, which is not what it should do. If we load it to a solid state drive, it takes a couple of seconds, which is what it should do. If we load it from the NAS drive, the network attached storage, it takes a couple of minutes, which is pretty normal. But if I take those same files and run them from the same kind of platter drive on my home machine, it only takes a couple of minutes. So I don't, and if you load, and here's the other weird one, if you load similarly sized images, not in this data set, but from another sample data set, those only take a couple of minutes to load. So it's this weird mystery of like these particular files on this particular drive don't load properly. I don't know why, but I've got a new hard drive that I'm going to try to throw in there today and just see if that fixes it. I'm also testing the RAM. So there's 512 gigs of RAM in that machine. It took a long time to do the testing. It actually succeeded in and got through a full first pass as of yesterday afternoon. So it wasn't quite done. It was at 91% when I took this photo, but still enough to consider that a pass. That's good to know as I'm sort of tracing down possibilities of why we would be getting random shutdowns on this machine. It does not seem to be a RAM problem. We're again sort of fighting high temperatures. It's a 350 watt processor, 64 cores. It's a lot of energy flowing through that. I had bought a CPU cooler. It was that I bought for two reasons. One is it was a little bit smaller and would fit in a rack-mounted, the standard server rack-mounted case to try to get. Potentially, we would put it in like a data closet or something. Instead of like in the lab. And then it also, I guess that doesn't work, but this works. The flow on the case goes from the back to the front to the back. So it's pulling in air from here through here. And so this was directed in a way where the fans are sort of oriented along this axis. So that was, people online had said it was supposed to help keep it cool. So I ended up, it was not keeping it cool and it was getting too hot, 97 degrees Celsius, which is too hot to be running a lot. With the new cooler that I put in there, which is like twice the size, it's now down to 88. So good improvement there. Probably still going to be fighting this for the next week, trying to get it back down. I did discover one of the questions that we had was how much power is this thing drawing? At one point, it definitely drew enough power that the battery backup was complaining. And that's a 900 watt battery backup. So I didn't know how much we were actually drawing, but I knew it was probably around 900. It turns out you can actually get a reading on how much power is flowing through the system, just on the power supply itself, which is really cool. So this was about 700 watts, and that was running more or less flat out. One of the projects that I'm working on is tracking human movement through buildings. So this is kind of the indoor mapping project that these guys are working on a little bit. I want to be able to track movement through the system. In fact, there's somebody in photography today that was like, how do I get movement data? And this is kind of how you do it. But one of the things that we're trying to do is attach audio information to the spatial data. So we've got LiDAR that works really well and kind of tracks how people are moving through the system. But what we also want to know is if two people kind of come together, are they just like on their phones and not talking to each other? Or are they actually like engaging in some interaction? We don't want to record the conversation, but we want to know, are they just sitting there or is there audio? Kind of one or the other. So we've got a system of microphones in that space that is trying to get at that, and we are trying to do it, but I ran across this pretty cool presentation about using this sort of interesting audio array that he's got there, and like a Raspberry Pi for building one of these things. It was a really neat demo. I'll probably show the video in advanced remote sensing because it was kind of a neat application. Sound is cool. And then this is kind of just a bookmark, but this is one Python-based way to process spatial audio that I hadn't heard of before. So ocular. This would be, it's like scientists that study bats. And so if they want to track bat activity, they can do that with sound. It's a totally remote sensing project. And this seems like an interesting way to take that data apart. In fact, I probably should email somebody about this. And then because I guess I was like looking for this kind of stuff, like Google was like, hey, would you be interested in this case, it's a FLIR acoustic imaging camera, which I didn't even know they made. So we use FLIR thermal cameras for a lot of the stuff that we do. I had no idea that they just had an acoustic imager. So that's pretty cool. I don't know that it makes much sense for like deer, but you can imagine certain kinds of like birds, right? You could track birds with one of these things. So some really interesting remote sensing applications for something like this. I don't know that we're going to necessarily get one, but maybe. I'm working with somebody in CS on doing some 3D reconstructions of under the canopy forests. So the idea is we often fly our drones over the forest to get the data, and we use LiDAR or whatever to get down in there. LiDAR penetrates through fine, but what we don't get is like the spectral information. So you can take a picture of the top of the forest and you can join that to the LiDAR data, but you can't get like can't tell the difference between like a tree trunk and a leaf. It all comes up the same. So the idea is that you could fly a drone overhead, build a map, and then essentially send smaller drones through the forest to try to take pictures as they fly. And so this was an idea that I had, and we're kind of building on that in CS. And this was a paper that just came out 4th of September, basically doing that same thing. So seems like a good idea. New enough that a couple people are doing it, but not new enough that like nobody's doing it. So excited to find that. And then on the fun side, I wanted to try to do a couple of things over the next couple of weeks. One is to try to get lab t-shirts. So we've been doing this for a long time. We've had 3 iterations of lab t-shirts. So I brought one here today. I just came to Binghamton last year, and I was at Virginia Tech before that. This is the last round of shirts that we made. They look like that. It's fun. It's something fun to do. And I always buy the soft ones, so I don't like big scratchy baggy shirts. I want to get the good ones. And then so I'd like to do that, and then that sort of fits in with computer names. So the last computer names that we had for the lab were Maverick and Goose. So it was right before Top Gun sort of got big again, I guess. And so we had 2 computers in the lab, and so that was what we had picked. So hence the sort of Top Gun theme for the logo. So those 2 ideas went together. So I like the idea of naming the computers. It makes it convenient, especially as we get multiple computers. Oh, are you using this computer, using that computer? If they have names, it's easy to do that. So it's nice to have computer names that you can build off of, right? So Maverick and Goose worked, and then when we got a new computer, then Top Gun sequel had come out, so that one got called Rooster. So you kind of want like a naming scheme that can be expanded upon if possible. We're gonna have 2 computers up in the lab, hopefully by next week. this one, plus the one that's kind of sitting in between you guys. So we've got the opportunity to name 2 computers. I might come up with a name for the other one. I'm really attached to Whopper, which was the name of the computer from the movie War Games, if you guys have seen that. It's a Matthew Broderick movie from 1982. It's fantastic. For some reason, Whopper kind of appeals to me. And then t-shirt designs. So this one was kind of hand designed. So I made that one. We've had a couple other ones in the past. And then I had just like worked up a couple of examples with ChatGPT before, and then I made a new one last night, which I kind of liked, the one kind of in the middle. It was like a little Prince inspired thing because we're the Near Earth Imaging Lab. The idea is that we do drones and like remote sensing, but remote sensing that's like really close to what we're doing. So I wanted to kind of get that idea in there. So magnifying glass has kind of worked in on some of these ideas, some of the things, but we can also just totally use the Top Gun one, which is a fantastic design and is ready to go. So that one could be instantly sort of spun at. Thoughts on t-shirts?
I like the magnifying glass one. I think this one likes too. Like I like the ones like. I mean, yeah, I like the ones with the globes too. I'm like all over the
Like
place
all of
with
them?
it. Like all of them.
I like the idea of the little prince one. I think that's a cute idea. Maybe like do a little prince one, but more similar, like simple design, like the one on like the bottom left.
Yeah, pare it down a little bit, make it a little simpler, yeah. And we'll have it say, Near Earth Imaging Lab around it, so it'll have that for sure. And then the tagline, which hasn't gotten a lot of use, it's on the website, but I think it's like get a little bit closer or something like that is kind of another adornment we could have on there.
I feel like the Little Prince one would be a good sticker
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
for like the back of computers
Yeah,
and
yeah.
laptops and stuff.
Yeah, I like that. Too busy for a shirt?
Yeah, I think it's my favorite design, but I think as far as t-shirt designs go,
Okay,
but I think a sticker would be good.
okay. All right. Are we definitely in favor of moving on from the Top Gun theme? Sort of played out, it might be a few years old at this point. Okay, all right, we'll move on from the Top Gun theme. That sounds good, something new for us. Computer name ideas? You don't have to come up with them all today right now. Why don't we just think about that one for a little while?
Okay.
See what you come up with, and we'll chat next week. All right, so my goals last week were to try the GPS out on the Ouster. I did not. That was the only thing I wanted to do, and I didn't do it. So I feel really bad about that. So that's on my list of things to do for next week. I want to try to get the big computer up online. I've been fighting that for like 3 weeks now. I gotta put that to bed, and then build the second research machine for the graduate students. So hopefully that'll get done. Moving forward. All right, Peter, you want to go next?
Sure.
I need to ready.
Yeah. Well, Halloween was yesterday, so happy Halloween, guys. Had to do a little bit of like some fun decorations. Yesterday, did a fun little pumpkin carving party. It was really fun with Sharif and Liam. Got a little crazy at times, but it was pretty good. Yeah. So this week, earlier this week, I got approval for the drone flights over the CAW Woods, the Nature Preserve, and the East Gym soccer field with Dr. Pingle, Sharifa, and Alana and I's Part 107s. So that's good through May 30th, 2025. So that's good till pretty much the time that we need to graduate.
So that's if like Buckman and I wanted to go fly and you were there with us, that works, right? We have permission for that?
Yes, if you come with that, like we know that for sure, that if you two come with one of us, like you're fine.
Okay.
but the thing we don't really know about is if trust exams are
Okay.
acceptable to go by.
I looked up, for some reason or another, I was on like the UAV policies page, and that made it sound like that should be enough, like they have recreational flyers listed specifically, so should be good.
But anyways, yesterday I went out with my lab group from advanced remote sensing. We collected GCP points for CIW Woods. I collected probably more than is needed, but that's just in case like one's easier to spot than another in like a Pix40 reconstruction.
Mhm.
I tried to find some good ones in the trails. Like this was like the trail marker, the beginning of it, and then this was like a mossy tree that might show up nicely, like between the trees and stuff. So mossy tree stump. So, yeah. And then that yesterday too, I was scouting CIW to like try to see what is a good place for visual observing. The bridge does seem like a decent enough place to visually observe it because that's the top of CIW over there.
Okay.
So it does seem like a good place to look at the DJI Mavic 3T. And yeah, and then set up a new trail camera with Zach. He helped me spot a good place for it. And that's in Fuller Hollow Creek. So I just have to email Dylan Horvath about where it's at. And then this is more trail cam data from CIW Woods, not Fuller Hollow Creek. So it's caught. You can see like it's catching, like it'll catch the same deer multiple times. Sometimes in these image frames, like it'll catch like, it's very sensitive. Like it'll catch squirrels, chipmunks.
Is it easy to put together the like these? Is it all automated? Like it comes off the camera as a
No, I just look up online like GIF generator,
Okay.
and then it just like throws all the image frames together for me.
Is there like do you consider like anything on the other side of the camera? Like, cause obviously this is an area with some amount of activity, so is there like any concern to having some sort of view on the other side of the tree that deer may be wandering around?
there's a good shot of, is it Scott?
Zach, yeah.
Zach.
Yeah, yeah. It's like when he walked up to the camera, he looked like confused. Like I thought, yeah. So,
So just classic, sorry to interrupt.
but yeah, no, that is a good point. That would be difficult to do. Like you would have to have like basically 2 trail cameras per spot, and like the reason why these trail cameras are pointed in these directions is they're pointed away from like moving cars or where people would generally
Okay.
be moving, because like you don't want the data to be wasted on that. So there's definitely specific statistics models that I think like the Mark Resight model probably has like a, like what do you call it, like a surrounding radius kind of like where of like yeah of like a good like population estimate. But so with that, I started creating an Excel sheet for the counting deer from these trail cameras. So if there was a multiple deer in the same image frame, like that just counted as like 2 deer. If there was 1 deer in one frame and then like a second later another deer came in, that still counted as 2. So then I just marked these. The dates were a little bit difficult to mark only because I had to reset the date system within the camera function. So a lot of these times are kind of just estimates of what was really going on. I was able to pretty much figure out what date it actually happened, what date they were at, just because I had labeled the folders of when I had put the trail camera into the woods, which was October 1st. So, but then the new data that comes in should be a lot easier to input and manipulate. So the other thing that I did was I started creating deer collision charts. This is data from the motor vehicles, motor vehicle, New York Motor Vehicle Administration. And this, I think I downloaded the wrong sheet because I have data that goes to 2022. So this was an older file, but this was just like kind of like a basic run through of kind of what's going on.
Yeah, put those together, keep it all the way back to 2018 if you
Yeah.
can. I think that's a really cool addition.
So this one is just for Broome County. So you can see how there's spikes in January and October, at
Oh,
least
yeah.
in this chart. And then January, June, that's interesting. And then October again. So like it's kind of, it's pretty consistent. This is really interesting. I did the times of days for vehicle collisions, and I'm pretty sure that's gonna align with when deer are like most active or when they're digesting food. And this pattern is very clear when you go to Binghamton too. It's like virtually the same pattern, which I thought was crazy. But you can see the frequencies are different. I thought at first I was very skeptical because I was like, maybe I messed up the data because it looks almost exactly the same, but
So, wait,
yeah.
what's hang on, the difference between these two is what?
Frequency.
One is Broome County and one was Binghamton?
Yep.
Okay, so one of the things I might do is normalize this one to the total number of collisions, because then that sort of scales you to like how many cars are on the road and it takes that out of the equation a little bit. So that would, I mean, this is interesting by itself just to get the raw number, but I think if you normalize it to total collisions, you'll get to see like, it should be like a mirror, like when deer are active, right, in a way.
Yeah.
Minus a little bit of like, are people more likely to get in collisions at certain times of day, which has to sort of be true, like, you know, won't smooth it all out, but yeah, it should be interesting.
This is just a start to this data analysis. This chart also shows that deer collisions are more present in October, November, January, February, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then goals for this week are to write, try to find time to configure dual drone controllers to the Mavic 3T, and then email Professor Horvath about weekly drone flights, hopefully starting next week. So,
Awesome. Yeah. Can I put one potential thing on your list?
Sure.
So we haven't really talked about the specs in the lab because it kind of snuck up on me, but the GIS day is coming up on the 15th. So I think probably only you and Sharif are in a good position to maybe make posters for that. But I think you've got enough to put something together. It's not a super formal event, right? It's just a chance to put something up there and talk about your work, think about it as like, you know, maybe a little more polished than a lab report, but like, you know, not a lot. Here's what I do and here's what I'm working on and here's future steps. You know, we've got thermal images that you can show. We've done a lot of sort of the groundwork, so.
yeah. I do want to look into that. I don't know if that DRAT algorithm is on GitHub or anything.
It's not, but I need to connect you with Carl Lippo and his two students that are in the FRI program are actively working on a correction. And they're loading one thing on Docker, which is apparently giving them trouble, but Carl is basically using Amazon's AI to write code to do it, which is super impressive, like how far he's gotten in like just a short amount of time. So I need to connect you up with them. At the moment, they're kind of working through the details, but I'm hoping like we can just like scoop up the output and not the output, but like when they get an algorithm that works, then we'll just use that.
Yeah, because I'm hoping to how did you do that for the thermal with mosaic?
Yeah.
And
Is it evident in your data? Like, have you run it to the point where you can see it in yours? Because who's the guy that wrote the DRAT? Is it Wang?
Yeah.
That one, there's an example of that in a figure, right? That's like, here's the problem.
Yeah.
Cool. Let me look at Jeff. Oh, and I got the dual controller from Adam, it's on my desk upstairs.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so for this week, I kind of focused on more of just combing through various news articles and reports of recent discoveries, for like archaeological sites using LiDAR. So things that are recent enough that they might not necessarily have published papers on exactly yet. So this is one that I found on Monday. This one is really recent. I think the earliest report I saw on this was from October 20th. So this was about a Portuguese settlement in the Amazon from the 1700s. So kind of a common trend that they find for a lot of these kind of lost cities, particularly the more, I guess, relatively recent ones, is that they know generally where they are based on historical maps and things like that, but like the exact location on the ground is not found. So this is one where they finally did rediscover it, and it was part of a project in the region called the Amazonia Revelada, which is just essentially a large scale effort of the source of data to rediscover lots of settlements of the native people, ancient native peoples, as well as the colonial settlements. So this was kind of the only thing that they really published about it was a statement from the lead researcher. They didn't really have any images yet. I think that's mostly because of how recent it is. They haven't really published anything yet. So the description of the site, it was kind of abandoned. There was lots of forest cover and the stone blocks removed. So this kind of indicates that there was a movement out of the settlement. So eventually, for whatever reason, people decided to move away. So they took what they could with them. Yeah, and they were able to identify the general layout of how the city was planned. So a second one was this kind of weird instance where it was kind of both an old and new discovery. It was new in the sense that this was recently discovered, but it was using data that was collected from 2013. So the what happened here was there was a forest administration did a survey of this part. I don't remember the specific country. I think it was either Mexico or Guatemala. But basically the Forest Service did a survey, to survey the land, and they found all these features, but because it was a forest survey, they didn't know really what to do with it, so it kind of got stuck in a catalog and lost for a long time. So it was relatively recently it was recently found again, and by archaeologists when they were able to look at it, and they noticed that there was over 6,500 structures within this data set that no one had knew about before, which is kind of a crazy thing to happen. So kind of the main, so based on the initial survey of kind of the main part of the feature, which is in the top image there, and it's also, I highlighted the area in the bottom image, which is the larger study area. It appears to be a major political center from the Mayan Classic period, which is about before 150 CE, which is cool because if you look at the bottom survey, I'll scooch up right here. This is actually it's not a large settlement, but there is an active place where people are living. So for it to be that close to where people are actually living and no one knew it was there is kind of crazy for it to be such an important site. But yeah, that was something that was really interesting.
When I was in Yucatan, I think there's an attitude among the locals. It's like, oh yeah, there's Mayan ruins over there.
Yeah,
and they kind of just
yeah,
becomes a part of the background.
Yeah, those kind of things get unreported because it's so common.
Yeah, and they don't know the extent of them, right?
Yeah,
There's some
exactly.
around here, but once you put them all together, that's amazing.
Yeah. So the third one that I was looking at was the one that you had mentioned about the Silk Road settlements. So this was kind of along the same kind of frame as the Portuguese settlement. So in 2011, they had identified the city of Tashbilac, which was kind of, again, a site that had been documented in historical records, but they didn't know where it was. So they found evidence of that city there, but they kind of going back and surveying it, they found another large one, the Tugunbulak was another significantly large settlement in this area that was along the Silk Road trade routes, which would have been major economic centers for trade. So it was kind of a long process. So they initially discovered in 2011, and they kind of went back in 2022 to do a more in-depth survey. And the thing that was notable about these locations was that they were located over 2,200 meters above sea level, which is really rare for human settlement, especially during that time period. Even now, there's like very few people who live above that line, and those are kind of only the people in like Nepal and the Himalayas who really live up that high in altitude. So then they suspected that the reason they were likely living this high was because they were using the strong winds to help them smelt iron and ores and things like that, which was really cool. But they also noted that that was probably also the reason that like the strong winds were part of the reason why they left, is because eventually at some point they couldn't, like it was doing too much damage to like their settlement, that it was not worth it anymore. Yeah, so that was that. So this was another one. This was in Tongatapu, which is a Pacific island. So they found 10,000 mounds with this LiDAR survey, which are believed to be home locations of the early settlements here. And so this was kind of dated, like initially dated. They estimated this would have been like one of, if not the earliest major urbanized cities within the Pacific Island settlements. And it shows that and it was really significant because it showed the process of the urbanization began before kind of the Western influence. So they believe that before this, they had believed that the kind of this process of urbanization had occurred within the Pacific Islands around the year 1000 AD. But with this, they kind of, this site right here would have set them back 700 years before that, which is really significant. And that they, on a general estimate, this location would have housed 50 to 60,000 people. And it was a low density urbanization, which was interesting. So I know that's kind of the reason where they showed that it wasn't necessarily Western influence. So Western urbanization tends to pack people together in dense cities. So this pattern of low density urbanization would really signify a different pattern of urbanization before Western influence. So on Tuesday, I met with Dr. Mixter, who was a professor of archaeology here. So kind of work on potential, feeling out potential thesis topics, and as well as for archaeology, you have to do a field school, and he runs a field school, so that's something we were investigating. So kind of the recap for that meeting is kind of wait for more of the field school information because they're still planning it out. It's a field school, it's a 4-week field school in Belize at a Mayan city that he works at. So that's something that they're still trying to figure out costs and things like that for. So one thing, so kind of the 2 tasks he gave me was for reading literature, particularly based with UAVs. So because of the terrain, a lot of the LiDAR surveys in that area is plane based or helicopter based, just because it's easier to get through the jungle and stuff, and you can cover larger areas. So he was less familiar with the use of UAVs and drones for this particular topic, so he wanted me to investigate prior uses of that. And also, he mentioned that, I forgot to mention this in our meeting yesterday, but if I was interested in pursuing a thesis topic during that time that I would be there for the field school, that he wanted to kind of start filling out or putting together a budget for what kind of the drones and batteries and stuff like that, so that he can kind of look at that and see if he should try to include that into any of his grants or things like that.
One of the things I told him was, getting the drone from here to there is not so bad, but the batteries aren't allowed on aircraft.
Yeah.
So he'd have to buy the batteries and have them shipped there. Have them, and then they would just stay there probably.
Yeah, so that was kind of the one thing that he was mentioning, because he said he's putting a grant budget together, I think due the 14th of November. So he was, depending on the cost, he was saying if it was like, I think he said generally around $4,000 or higher, then he would like to try to include that in the grant. But if it was kind of less than that, then that's something they can just relocate funds that they already have for.
Okay.
So that's something to look at, and then again, just reading the literature. So goals, read the literature, and Buckman and I are trying to plan to do more practice drone flights on the East Soccer Field to get more practice with that, and then do more practice with LiDAR manipulation.
Very good. Okay. I would add on to your goals for the next couple of weeks would be try to get your 107 under your belt.
Okay.
I think sooner rather than later.
Okay.
And Buckman, you two possibly, but it kind of depends on what your specific goals are. If they start drifting more towards Microsoft Planetary Computer and LiDAR analysis, then it's a little less critical, although it's still a good thing to do. But for you, it's like starting to look like you're going to be doing a lot of it. So
Yeah.
If you guys are open to it, I think there's a part of the nature preserve that's like relatively easy to fly. Like the first flight we did, I think might be okay too.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
get beyond the soccer field.
Yeah,
It's a nice
okay.
spot, but
Cause that place is easy, like there's a place in MLAT where you can easily see it, no problem.
Okay.
do you guys in FRI fly in the nuthatch area? Because that's come up in conversation with Carl and I a couple of times.
My group isn't doing that. In the second semester in lab, last year, we were kind of shafted regarding drones because we didn't get approval to go to the nature reserve soon enough.
Hmm.
So we didn't actually get to do like normally our lab does a thermal drone imagery lab to count the deer population in the nature preserve.
Yeah.
And that has been a long running thing, but it didn't get approved fast enough for us to do it, so we used old data. But it is done. I don't know if any groups in my semester are doing that. I think we're all doing ground-based stuff.
Okay. Sounds like we need to collaborate a little bit more, because
Yeah, how big of an area do you guys normally fly?
Not, I don't know, because we didn't really do that. We did touch on the flying itself, but we did that in like the Core Guard of Science one, like it wasn't extensive because the approvals didn't come through fast enough.
Okay, so then what year was the data you obtained from? I think that might be.
Maybe one or two prior. It wasn't that old. I can probably find it if you wanted.
Yeah, I would love to look at that. I think Madison might have collected that.
yeah, it might be good for you to set up a meeting with Joe Panzik.
Yeah, our class is Fridays right before this at 8:30, but it was canceled today. Seasick.
But just to kind of like, hey, here's what we're doing, because I didn't know that you guys were doing thermal flights every year. I know
I
that when
believe
you
it's
got
been
started, it
every
was
year.
through that, so like,
Yeah.
I know the tether, but I didn't know it was still going.
Yeah, I heard about that. It's just I never, I don't know. It's like. I wasn't too sure how in depth it was, especially when the previous professor was still there.
I think it's been a lot of growing pains, but Dr. Panzik has, as far as I've seen, started to really get going with those standard things now that he's been here for a bit.
So yeah, that's another thing. I want to email Dr. Joe Panzer.
Yeah.
Buckman, no lab report today?
No, but I have a question.
Okay,
Yes, I'm reviewing an article and I wanted to find out, normally we pick, when we are marking GCPs, we mark them horizontally. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but this very article was considering vertical GCPs,
like on vertical walls?
yes.
Huh?
And I was wondering their effects on elevation data, whether it will improve the accuracy or.
Shouldn't improve the accuracy of anything. Yeah, can't think of, let's talk about it. Yeah, let's talk about it at the lab meeting, or not the lab meeting, let's talk about it in our meeting next week. Send me a message, because I want to look at it and make sure I'm up to speed on what was the claim that vertical GCPs,
Yes, so they were doing an urban reconstruction.
right?
And then they flew off NADA and then oblique.
Yeah.
And then they were trying to use they are not using RTK GPS,
They're not?
they are not. they are supposed to, so they are using GCPs, but then they are using GCPs from mobile mapping system. And so they consider GCPs on the horizontal level. That is the road markers and
Yeah.
stuff. And then also on the wall, like corners.
I guess that makes sense. If you're running a sensor, and this actually would probably matter a little bit for indoor mapping too, right? If you're running a sensor through a place where you're getting as good of a look or maybe better at walls or building sides than you are on the ground, then it would start to make sense to include them. Things like the RS3, one of the nice things about the tilt compensation is now you can get a good measurement because you can stick that on the wall instead of, you know, and it will do the calibration for you. Like you could always do a manual calculation and try to figure it out, but like it's better. So yeah, interesting. Also, RTK solves that problem more or less. So route around it.
Yeah, I think they were trying to do away with RTK because they think it's quite expensive to get it. And so, and then using the drone's GPS is very cost, as in the accuracy is not good. So they were trying to augment it with the MMS.
Yeah, let's chat about it next week. Interesting.
I did find, so as it was 2022 data that we actually processed because we didn't collect any, but a part of it was planning our route, so it looks like we planned for the full nature preserve. So assuming that that is still standard, there is probably existing data for past years and a precedent for it to be done through our lab every year.
Yeah, I know about the press, I know about the annual flight, but I wanna know how, like, I don't know specifically how you guys are planning those flights and how the sections are divided, cause I have flights for 2020 data that was conducted in 4 flights. But we'll talk after.
Yeah. And maybe it's a date, yeah, if there's 2022 data, fine, we'll chat about it.
Yeah.
All right, Brad?
So I was looking at the indoor positioning apps because I'm really interested in indoor mapping. So I was looking for those apps which are really support to Android version. Yeah, now it's working, I'm sorry. So I was really looking on these apps, Good Maps, Indoor Atlas, Map2, Maps Indoors, and Indoor Finders. So what I have seen for the Good Maps indoor navigation, they print the map with a LiDAR scanner and with 360 degree data. But the thing is, they don't give us the opportunity to create the map by us. They send their authority, a person who comes, and then they create the whole mapping. They don't let us do the mapping by our own.
So let me ask you a clarifying question. Do they send a technician out to do
Yeah.
the scanning? Okay.
Yes. Because
Well,
they
that's a
have
bummer.
a LiDAR of their own and they don't reveal the technology, how they are doing the mapping.
Ah, that's a shame, because I really liked that scanner. I was like, oh, that looks great. Well, a handheld thing, cameras on it, like, yeah, that's just the thing. Okay.
The game's like Men in Black.
So the next one is Indoor Finders. They actually provide the hybrid workplace, which is innovated or built for pandemic term when people are doing work from home and also in office. They use the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth technology, and for creating floor plan, JPG, PNG, and AutoCAD files are usable. So this one is Maps Indoor. It provides 2D and 3D map both, and they are applicable both in iOS and Android platform. Rely on 99% on system time for consistent performance, and we can create our own map in this app or this technology. And this item, they are saying that they provide lowest setup cost. It's 40% less bacon are used here. Actually, I like this one most, Indoor Atlas Map Creator 2, because it's using the geomagnetic fingerprinting maps, also date reckoning, and Wi-Fi signals, Bluetooth signals. What is available, they are using those things. And for the data safety, the data is encrypted and they don't share the data with any third parties. Here we can set up create our own map, and they give the pretty much clear instruction how to create the map, indoor mapping. And they also provide 30 days free trial, which we can see from the above picture. So if I make a comparison, pretty much all of them are same, but in Indoor Atlas, what I felt it need more bacons, because somewhere it said that for 4-meter wall, each bacon needed. I was also wondering for the Microsoft Place. So for the Microsoft Place work with the Microsoft 365 and Outlook, they provide us the opportunity to create our own map. Also, they have a team, those who can come and help us to create the map, but for that they will charge $129 per floor plan. And sometimes they provide 3 months free access for this technology. And actually this cost by person. How many person are using this Microsoft Places? Suppose in a team or in an organization there are 10 person. So for each, we have to provide $10 to them if we are using the Microsoft Places, their technology. And my goal is I want to explore more, because I'm looking for a free indoor mapping system, which the app is totally free. Today morning, I have seen that Orient one is providing the free technology. I will look at more on this, because I haven't get enough time to look on the Orient one. I'm sorry. It's making sound, I'm sorry.
No?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, do we still have time for you? Are you gonna be able to make it?
I can try and bridge through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Good time.
Does this have a laser pointer on it?
It does, but it doesn't show up when you shoot it at the screen, unfortunately.
Okay.
I could give you the keyboard and then you can use the pointer on the mouse.
Yeah, I'm just-
Here, I can put it up, yeah.
Thank you. So I'm looking back at my 2 weeks ago now. There were a couple things that I had that I wanted to accomplish. One of them was extracting some spectral signatures that I obtained from a paper. This paper came again from someone's dissertation, and they had spectral signatures of different mines as well as vegetation. And so you see the red PFM mine, that's the spectral signature that I was trying to extract. So I used this online tool to do that, and you can see the movie playing ever so slowly. At the top, the top right, you see the magnifier to do the extraction. The meme at the bottom left is trying to signify how it felt when I was making the extraction, very much like looking at it throughout the gate kind of situation. But I was able to extract it and it looked good, so that's success. The other thing that I talked about was the reconstruction of the 10-meter flight. So again, I had 4 different heights. I had 5, 10, 15, and 20-meter flights at the field site. The 10-meter one was the one that came out best. Unfortunately, the GCPs that were given to me from the paper that they published, which you see on the left here, the GCPs don't really line up with the ortho photo that they have, the organization D-9. And so I was trying to get another set of GCPs that were collected from Rochester Institute of Tech. And I was finally able to obtain those GCPs, which you see at the top here. And so I was able to get a 10-meter reconstruction that I think that we're happy enough with and that we're eventually going to actually move away from. So I met with my other advisor from the Earth Sciences, Dr. Alex Nicolin, along with Dr. Pengel this week. And we talked about moving away from ortho photos and trying to actually instead use individual photos, because there were some concerns about parts of the ortho photo where it was still very blurry, especially this bottom portion here. So we're going to try and move into that realm from this point on. But before we completely move away from ortho photos, there are a couple of research questions that we were trying to get at. And one of them was, well, we have this 10-meter flight and it's the best one that we have from the 4. What do we want to do in terms of the multispectral? Do we think that if we run the 4 separate bands separately, that the ortho mosaic is going to come out better, versus if we combine all 4 bands and try to create an ortho photo? So this is one of the research questions that I'm trying to answer. So you see the photos, the 5 photos here. In the red, you see the PFM mine that I'm trying to detect. You can see that the RGB is probably going to be the best one you have. For the near infrared and the red edge, it's almost undetectable. So that's something that is going to be interesting to try and explore. The other question that I have is, with the multispectral data, specifically looking at the infrared band, is it applicable to the field of landmine detection? The reason that this research question came about was there were a couple of papers that you see in the bottom center where they kind of outlined that multispectral is not really great actually in the field of landmine detection. And then you see the figure at the bottom. And you see kind of in the center here, you have red edge and near infrared, where they say that in the paper, in the text of the paper, they say that the PFM mine is not detectable in these bands. However, looking at this figure, you can, with the human eye, visually detect these landmines. So the idea is trying to do a small experiment to see if we can actually detect the infrared, the PFM in the infrared band. So to do that, I will be setting up an experiment in my backyard this weekend, which you see the visual of that to the left. And so the idea is you're going to need good weather, goodish weather. The tripod that's here in the lab, my mine that I have, the multispectral sensor, and then I also need permission from my landlord. So the procedure is I'm going to lay up the mine overnight tonight, and then hopefully that's going to be the coolest part of the night. And then the next morning from sunrise to about 10 a.m. late morning, I will try to capture images every 30 minutes using a time lapse. And then hopefully the following week, I can try to analyze and process the data and see that if we can actually detect this PFM, looking at the different different times of the day that I collected the data. If the PFM mine is not detectable in the multispectral, then that part of the thesis may have to be done with, and it's time to focus on the RGB. So that's kind of the goal of this experiment. So we'll see how that goes, and I will report back next week. So with the new idea in mind of 1, using RGB images, and 2, using individual images rather than making an orthomosaic, the next step is trying to apply this to deep learning algorithms. So there are two that I will be looking at. One of them is Microsoft's VOTT Visual Object Tagging Tool, and then also Dash Doodler. These are both annotation and tagging tools, and so I have not used VOTT before, but I have used Dash Doodler. So I'm gonna try both methods out and see how they compare. Oh, and that's just the movie if you see on the right of the doodler in action. So it's kind of like scribbling. PowerPoint has something similar. If you insert a picture into PowerPoint, there's an option where you can remove the background, and it's very similar to this where you're just scribbling and it will remove or add whatever you're scribbling. A lot of goals for the next week or so. Thesis writing, I have a couple of specific things that I want to get down. That is defining my objective as well as starting on some a question for the introduction. The other thing is meeting with Shashank, who has used Microsoft VOTT before, so that'll be good. Working on that, Doodler versus VOTT. There are some files that I need to upload, the thermal experiment in my backyard this weekend. And then I will probably be recruiting some of y'all for some future fieldwork that I'll need to do, so be on the lookout for messages on Slack. And also don't forget, daylight savings time ends this Sunday.
Oh, no. Thanks for the heads up.
Yeah.
All right, awesome, thank you, thanks everyone. Cool, and thank you to both of you for coming, it was great to have you. Happy to chat if you have any questions. All right, we'll wrap it up, thanks.
You got me that data.
Yeah.
For the webinar.